Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to another Webinar Wednesday sponsored by the California State University Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. Well, we're back for managing your small business beyond the pandemic. This is our 106th in our series that began back in March of 2020. So good afternoon. My name is Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the CSU Bakersfield SBDC program. And your host today, I get to present. This is my one golden shot every month that we kind of go into the details and we get into a lot of the technical aspects that make up a lot of the programs that we can't get into in greater detail when we have our guest speakers. Great guest speakers, I might add, but today we're going to take your questions. You can put your questions in the Q&A box. You can go to the chat. We'll have some resources available in the chat. We'll distribute everything that we can distribute and talk about a lot of the programs that are going on and a lot of the updates that we have in further detail. What is up today, March 23rd, 2022? Well, the California Dream Fund is starting to get a little bit more traction, and we're just going to get into some more details as they become available. And more of them are available today. So we will look at a lot of the aspects of what takes the California Dream Fund. And we're also going to get into details of last week's eidl changes. A lot of eidl changes last week that we covered in very, very limited detail. And actually, we'll cover those and get into that. Also, the current micro grant funding is going to begin in early April. So that's the Kern County portion of the California Micro Grant Program. We'll have that update on the funding and also the application update. Hey, look, we have a mystery. We have a mysterious bullet today of what's up. One special guest today that we will just leave right there. Doesn't happen very often out of the 105 or 106 now. So we'll explain that momentarily. We'll have our update on all the other pandemic and relief programs. And as always, we'll take your questions, put your questions in the Q&A box. We do not take live questions during this webinar. There'll be some resources in the chat box. We will get to your questions at the conclusion of today's presentation. So let's go on to the polls today. And we do have multiple poll questions for you on a variety of different aspects and things that are going on. So let's launch the first poll questions. And there it's a varied group of 4 questions today. So 4 poll questions, and there's a lot in the news about gas prices and energy cost in general that have been rising. The state of California is sitting on a lot of cash these days. The pandemic's been good if you're a state government, apparently. So the state of California, the lawmakers and governor's office are looking at different ways in order to return some of that money to individuals like you and me. So our first question is going to be on, with the several ideas being floated on easing higher energy costs from Sacramento, which do you prefer? Do you prefer suspending California gasoline taxes, or would you prefer the rebate being proposed, $400 per driver? Or maybe a rebate that's not associated with the energy use, just a rebate that comes to you, or some other form of compensation, or some other form of reimbursement from the state. So, and you can go into other, if you have an other, go into the chat and put that in there, and we'll get that read to you. So the 4 that we have right here are, as far as some type of rebate or refund or reduction in taxes or something else. What do you prefer? Do you prefer suspending the California gasoline taxes, the highest, I believe, in the country from a state perspective? Are you in favor of rebating $400 per California driver? Rebate, but maybe not the rebate that's associated with energy, maybe an across the board rebate with some of the money that the state is sitting on, or if there's some other that you have, please choose it. So we have 70% of you that are participating. And so with 4 polls today, I'm not going to give you a lot of time. If you entered. That's great. 75% of you. Let's end that poll and let's share the results with you. And the results for the first one are 52% of you would prefer suspending California gasoline taxes. 43% prefer the $400 per driver rebate. 5% of you would like a rebate that's not associated with energy, and that covered us. No other needed. So 52% on suspending California gasoline taxes. And I've heard from a lot of you out there in the last week or so on this particular topic. And a lot of small businesses weren't as happy if you had a fleet, for example, about the rebate being $400 per individual driver. So spurred the question, and thank you for participating in question number 1. So we will stop that particular question and let's move on to question number 2. And now let me set this one up. And with the National Federation of Independent Business is something that we have really kind of used throughout the pandemic, throughout this series of webinars to kind of gauge locally if we're seeing the same thing nationally. So the National Federation of Independent Business usually every 4 to 8 weeks will survey their membership. Their membership is largely business owners that have between 0 and 20 employees. 600 people or so participate. So we like to see if our poll equals theirs. So what I'm going to do right now is kind of launch this first question. And it is one that we've asked before, and it's how long do you think it will take your local community to get back to pre-crisis level of economic activity? Is it right now? Or is it the first half of 2022, the second half of 2022, or is it 2023 or later? So when do you believe that your actual local, and we have quite a few varied local communities in here, the 3 counties that we serve of Kern, Inyo, and Mono, and throughout the Central California region. But what we're looking at is when do you think we will be back? We have 60% of you that have participated now. And that is going to end this particular poll. And I'll share the results with you. When do you think? Only 5% think it is now. Nationally, 23%. And this is a very recent poll from just a couple of weeks ago. So 23% on a national level, also much higher for the first half of 2022. 26% think the second half, and also 68% of you think it's going to take till next year or later before we get back to pre-crisis level of economic activity. So we are more pessimistic than, say, on a national perspective of this poll, but thank you for responding, and let's move on to our next question, question number 3. And it's going to be related to also a NFIB poll question. And it's going to be, is your current staffing shortage better, worse, or about the same as it was 3 months ago? So is it better, is it worse, or is it about the same? And so with that, we'll get your questions to staffing. Is your staffing better, worse, or about the same? And we'll compare that to the national numbers. Okay. So here we go. And let's in that particular poll, we got 56%, 60% of you, and I love getting to that 60% threshold. Okay, so sharing those results, is your current staffing better, worse, or you don't have a staffing shortage? So we had 17% of you say better. That is slightly better than the national average. Worse, 27% was the national number, and ours is 39. So both better or worse, or it doesn't apply to you. So thank you for a little bit of an update on the staffing issues that are going on. And now let's go for our whimsical, or is it, question of the day. Maybe not as fun as our last questions that we've done, but there was an acronym that floated, and I'll give you a little hint on this one. It was floated quite a few decades ago when inflation was a real problem again. So potentially blew that one, but is it WIN? The acronym WIN, does it stand for the Women's Intuition Network? Women's Intuitive Network, does it stand for Whip Inflation Now or Win It Now? So our WIN, what does it stand for? Does it stand for the Women's Intuition or Intuitive Network? Does it stand for Whip Inflation Now? Or does it stand for Win It Now? WIN. And we'll show you that button right now. There's a look of the button behind, possibly behind your poll question. But what we're going to do with 68% of you in, we're going to end the poll and share the results with you and see that 48% of you are correct. It is Whip Inflation Now. 33% would have made totally good sense on this webinar. The Women's Initiative Network or Intuition Network, however we want to phrase it, both of them. And that's not an organization, by the way, I did check. And then the last one, Win It Now, 19%. So thank you for participating in the polls today. That is it for the polls. And let's move along. And moving along, what we'll see is there it is, the actual poll itself for the Whip Inflation Now. And it's kind of funny, Whip Inflation Now kind of gives me a little segue to talk a little bit about inflation. Normally I leave this for one of our fine CSU Bakersfield economists from the School of Business and Public Administration Economics Department to come on, but you know, I'm going to play amateur economist a little bit today and talk a little bit and show a little bit about this. We'll get more into this later, but so anyway, the Whip Inflation Now was a program that actually started back in 1974 under then President Gerald Ford. And President Ford actually came up with, and we'll look at a little bit about what's going on with inflation back then. And we'll see that inflation was a real issue in 1974, right here, 11.05%. And so this grassroots effort of Whip Inflation Now, which really didn't get a lot of press with, a lot of run with economists. They thought it was a little silly, encouraging individuals such as yourself and myself in order to grassroots try to do what you can not to support prices that were rising and buy other alternatives. So what we saw after that, though, we did see an inflation decrease for as little credit as that program got, and came all the way down to, you know, down to 5%, but then gradually increased to really the highest inflation we've had in history in 1980. So 6 years later, after the Whip Inflation Now, we had 13.55% as a national inflation rate for that period. And that's US inflation rate. So really hoping that 6 years later, we don't see inflation spike after what's going on right now. We see the Federal Reserve is doing a lot, and there's a lot of actions that they're taking to raise interest rates. That was a major story this week for interest rates rising. Interest rates are going to continue to rise as we see this. And then really it kind of, if you kind of go on here, you see where inflation really kind of finally got under control, but it was 1982, which led to a really bad economic period as well with recession. And the recession from the 82, 83, 84 period was pretty bad, pretty bad. Maybe going back, I believe when we were talking about the Great Recession of 2009, this is the era you went back to an economic period that was this bad. So I guess the lesson here is to be mindful and to watch the general economic conditions, because general economic conditions as business owners are something that we cannot control. All we can do is kind of monitor and see what's going on in the economy, in the general economy, and do our best to manage our business in spite of what is happening on a national level. Okay, so that is what we have on inflation and a little thing on Whip Inflation Now. And going back to our presentation. Okay, so let's get into some of our status and action for key relief. And this is kind of what is going on right now with a lot of the pandemic relief programs that we've talked about for so long. So we are going to get into the California Dream Fund in pretty good detail today, by far the most extensive detail since we've started talking about this program coming probably about 6-8 weeks ago. And it is getting here now. It is arriving. So first thing you do is, if you're interested, you express that in an email to SBDC. There's an acronym for the California Small Business Development Center at ucmerced.edu. So our lead center throughout the California region is located in Merced. You will send it to them. They are the ones that are dealing and handling the inquiries, and will be handling those that are interested in signing up for this particular program. Also, we're going to talk about in pretty good detail today the Kern County Micro Grant Program. And we still have on here funding in late March, because I am the eternal optimist, and I am hoping this thing funds by March the 31st. Realistically, I think funding will begin in sometime in early April. So, but I'm just going to stick on to my optimistic roots and say, let's shoot for March 31st and shoot for that particular date. And we'll talk about that more in detail as well. We won't be talking more detail about the Mono County Grant and Forgivable Loan Program. It is open. It is a community development block grant funded program. So those particular programs have a little bit more of a particular issue, and have a little bit more, issues that were related to them in order to, they're a little bit of work to get done. Who you're going to want to see there is, you're going to want to see one of two Jeffs, either Jeff Simpson, the Economic Development Manager in Mono County, and he will refer you to Jeff Lucas, who is their consultant, making the process as painless as possible. But Mono County businesses, you do have options that are available for you. Our eidl loan program is closed, but there was a lot of changes last week, including the 30-month deferment. And this deferment is 30 months from the time your loan was signed is when you begin your first payment. We're going to talk about that in greater details. I kind of brushed over it a lot last week. We have a little bit more time to get into that and to get into some other aspects that are available still. Even though the eidl loan program is closed, there are still possibilities for getting more money. And that is money at 30 years at 3.75% that we might not ever see again. The employee retention credit, I was going to talk about that in quite a bit detail today, but let's just say that it is still open retroactively in the periods of 2020, 2021 ended in September of 2021. So the end of the third quarter was the last period that was open. We had hoped to get that opened again, but with a lot of the events in the world going on, a lot of changes were made for it and the restaurant revitalization program, with neither of those being picked up in the omnibus spending bill that was passed by Congress a week ago or so. So the city of Bakersfield has their Restart Loan to Grant program. Again, you're going to want to contact Access Plus Capital. Locally, you can contact Buffy Norby in their Bakersfield office, located here in downtown Bakersfield, right around 21st and 8th Street, I believe about 4 blocks north of our location here in downtown. But they are still, I believe, working through that particular program. So contact Buffy or the Kern Women's Business Center, who's working on that particular program. The Small Business Credit Initiative. This is the funding program that came down from the Treasury. We're going to have a guest speaker from the California Office of the Treasury next week, and we might be able to get some ideas, since a lot of this is coming out of them. So I'm going to really kind of defer this one until next week. We will talk enough about it today to say that this was money of about 1.18 billion that came from the US Treasury. So it was part of the ARPA funds and part of that particular stimulus program. And so it has a number of programs that are there for both lending programs to make loans better, because a lot of the free money that's out there is going away. And we really, as small businesses, if we aren't properly capitalized now, need to look at ways of properly capitalizing our particular businesses. And a lot of that moving forward is going to be with debt programs rather than some of the grant programs that would have one more to talk about today. So that'll be loan programs, but potentially there could be some venture programs that come out of it. And that should be coming out relatively soon, if not extremely soon. So the California Relief Grant Program. We have the California Relief Grant Program that we talked about for almost all of 2021. That was the one that you went through lendistry.com. They are still particularly funding. And, you know, our mystery spot in what we're going to do today is going to be a live look in from, you know, our webinar producer, Maureen Busher-Dang, an SBDC consultant, to discuss one of the particular cases that she saw. Maureen, thank you for coming in and joining us right now. It's great to have you here. Take it away.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Can you see me now?
You are there.
All right, great. One of the things we say that you're not supposed to have a guest do, right? At any rate, so I'm here to give a slight glimmer of hope to anybody who applied to the California Relief Grant Program. I had a conversation with a client of mine this weekend where I helped him in January of last year apply. You know, it was kind of an arduous process. He did not have luck trying to upload PDFs and everything. It took quite a bit of time. So mind you, this has been over a year ago, and he just got an email that he got last week. He got it on St. Patrick's Day that said that he had been, you know, was going to receive $15,000. He should be getting it sometime this week. The email came from Lendistry CRG closing team via DocuSign. And it didn't stop there because, so I guess they didn't get stuff that he'd uploaded. They were telling him it wasn't there. He'd gone through multiple phone calls. We even did stuff last summer to try to do that. The fact, I thought that they weren't even giving any money out, and we both had just kind of written it off. And so he was doing cartwheels, the fact that he's going to get $15,000 this week. So there's hope. The thing is, he never got anything from it. He didn't get a denial saying that he'd been, he just kept being pushed over into the different rounds. Remember, they had all the different rounds. So if you're someone who has applied for the California Relief Grant Program and haven't been denied, there may be hope still. The primary thing, and I know Kelly, you've talked about it a lot, is to make certain that you check your email, because I'm noticing on this, it's a different email that my client used than I've seen him use before. So point being is I don't know if he checks it very regularly. So, because in this, what I'm looking at said that he had 48 to 72 hours to get back to them. Well, anyway, that's the good news on that front.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Maureen. It's always great to have Maureen. Maureen is so valuable behind the scenes. It's fun to put her in front of the camera just so she can ask if we can see her.
Thank you.
So thank you, Maureen. And I think really the point out of that is going to be is that we have seen, you know, in working with the California Micro Grant Program, you know, that's limited to those that only have 50,000. So if you only have 50,000 in actual earnings, if you're over that, you hopefully applied for the California Relief Grant Program. And the news there is that if you did, there still could be some relief coming in that program. So, and it also could mean that since they still have funds, that they could potentially, and this is something I want to ask the Office of Small Business, because we do have 3 or 4 applicants that have over that $50,000 threshold that did not receive the California Relief Grant, which would have been available for 5, 15, or 25,000, depending on the size of their business. So this is going to be the opportunity for us to go back to the Office of Small Business and ask them if there could be a potential opportunity for us to take those businesses that did not receive it and move forward with it, even though the deadline for applying to that program ended months ago. Okay, PPP is still open. Actually, And we're still working with people that are on there. And then also the restaurant revitalization program ran into a particular problem as far as that omnibus bill as well. We thought there was going to be more money coming there. It is not, as we learned last week. Okay, I'm going to just jump to the question. I have a question real quick. Let me answer it before I move on. And it has to do, can the EIDL loan be forgiven after 30 months if the business is not currently doing well? And the answer is no. The EIDL is going to be a loan and it's not going to be forgivable. So if you received actually the EIDL loan where you signed the documents, there were various aspects of EIDL. Remember, there was the targeted EIDL that was last year. That was a particular grant program. There was the EIDL Advance in 2020, and there was the supplemental EIDL. So the key thing on EIDL and EIDL forgiveness is that those loans are not going to have to be repaid. And actually those were turned into grants and actually even called grants later on. Now, if you went through the EIDL portal and you did a loan and you signed loan documents and you received an LLA, which is an acronym, of course, for loan agreement and I believe arrangements. It's probably wrong, but I haven't said it in a while. But if you receive the LLA, which is basically a notes payable request and tells and gives you instructions on that, then you have a loan that is not forgivable. Any other forms of EIDL are, but if you actually received that loan agreement that you signed and sent back DocuSign and have that LLA, loan arrangement and authorization, I think that's it. So that is the difference on that. So hopefully that answered a question, and don't do that very often, but you know. Okay, let's move on to the California Dream Fund program. And the California Dream Fund program, you know, is that particular program that my question box to go away, is actually out there. And maybe this is why I don't answer questions, because my question box never seems to want to go away. Let me try one more thing. There it is. So the California Dream Fund program, $35 million around the state to fund businesses in the tune of $5,000 to $10,000, particularly for new business starts. And these are to create small businesses in underserved communities. And by underserved communities, I believe they mean underserved individuals and also low wealth and rural communities in that particular definition. So we do have quite a bit of new information on this particular grant program. Again, what you're going to want to do is, if you are interested in actually participating in this particular program, is you are going to want to go to send an email to casbdc@ucmerced.edu, the same email address I gave you earlier. And the regional Central California Regional Network is accepting applications for the training component of this program. So to participate in this program, you need to complete the training, the business plan, the technical assistance, and then your application goes to lindustry.com. So entry into this program does not guarantee funding. So that is stuff that we've heard and we've told you. So what is new? And I'm going to go over what is new. Look, we have the logo from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate and their disclaimer at the bottom. That is new. So one thing that is new is a business plan is required, and they have a required format that will be uploaded into the Lindustry site. Now, I realize I'm getting the cart before the horse here by going over the business plan, because really what you are going to need is also, in my opinion, is a training plan. And this particular training plan not only is for you, your own individual purpose. And let me not try to confuse you too much on what I think a training plan is. Mine is an individual training plan that you, as an individual business person wanting to start this particular business and hopefully access the $5,000 to $10,000 out there that you will not have to repay, you want to first determine what you want to achieve. The training program is great in really finding out what you really want to achieve and what you want to learn. And sometimes that's very difficult because you don't know what you want or what you need to learn. So oftentimes, when we get into this, I have my particular things, and I'm going to go over those in a few minutes that I hope you want to learn. But oftentimes, as an individual, you'll have some strengths in some particular areas and you'll have some weaknesses. I always think it's best to kind of round out, because with small businesses and running a small business, you need so many different hats and you need a general knowledge of so many different items. We'll get into this next week also when our speaker comes in and talks about a particular program that you'll need to know about then. So, one of the things is trying to have the end in mind on what you want in a training program and a training plan, and use that going forward. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're just trying to jump through hoops and do the training plan and talk to a consultant in order to get $5,000 or $10,000, you're doing this wrong. You're not doing this the right way. We're here to build sustainable small businesses. And by training and by educating small businesses and those that want to learn more about running and having a sustainable small business. In a little bit, I'm going to talk about sustainable working capital and what that is. And, it can be this $5,000 to $10,000 you get here, but it might not be also. So really, I really want you to put the effort behind this and to take the training and go forth into a training program and to meet with an advisor to actually work on that sustainable aspect. Build a plan from the ground up. Build a plan from the ground up in order to have a roadmap to success for your particular program. So on that, it gets into, after you do your training aspect, we go back to that particular business plan. And I can share with you what is going to be required from the business plan. Now, in working with a lot of businesses on business plans, I really think a business plan is an excellent opportunity for you to really build that roadmap to success for your particular business. Far often, individuals will say, gee, this is what I need to do in order to get some type of funding. And there's going to be other funding that comes along that's going to be out there besides this $5,000 to $10,000 that you don't have to repay. Repaying $5,000 to $10,000 isn't even close to repaying what it would cost for the cheapest new car loan over the longest period of time. A 6-year payment, for example, on a new car that costs you $20,000, $25,000 is still going to be $300, $400. Over that same term, $5,000 to $10,000 isn't a lot to repay. I know many of you have your heart set on getting that, and I know many of you will. But until the state of California puts more money into that particular aspect, that grant is not going to be available for everybody. But the good news is that there are funding programs that keep coming online, and there are more and more that you can use to work with. So with a business plan, the business plan is for so many reasons. The reason I get most choked up when I see a good business plan, it's when somebody writes it for their success. They're not writing it for somebody else. They're using it as that roadmap for their success. So having that particular plan, I think if you even have a business plan now, you're going to be able to incorporate this into a lot of different areas. So let's jump into what this particular plan looks like. And so this is the California Dream Fund Business Plan particular template. And again, I'm getting the cart before the horse because there is a training component of this, of which if you have not written a business plan is an excellent opportunity to do that. And I still think that the training augmented with consulting one-on-one with your own business advisor is the most powerful way that individuals can start businesses. I'm sold on that. I've seen it happen for 30 years. It is the best way by combining training and consulting. You get the overall concepts and the basis with the training, you augment those to your particular business with the consulting, and it is the best grounded way for success still. Now, saying that, you're going to be writing a business plan once you start your training and working with an advisor if you go through the California Dream Fund particular program. And here's the model that they want. And some of this can obviously be cut and paste out of information that you already have. If you work with our Small Business Development Center, for example, you might be using Live Plan. Live plan, there is going to be a way, obviously, to cut and paste and use live plan in this particular template that is uploaded into the lindustry.com website in order to try to get funding. So with this comes basically client information and contact. It's going to be just the applicant, the business. It's stuff we've filled out on a lot of different other information. What legal form of entity do you hope to take the business? Again, since you aren't generally in business at this time, this is a question that is important in determining what business entity you would want. You know, you start off as a sole proprietor unless you are actually then move forward and actually go take some other form. And the other forms could be a limited liability company, a partnership, an S or C Corp, or some other form of benefit corporation. So you will select your business entity. Typically, what we see is, and coming back a little bit here, is about the plan is what type of business you will be starting, and you'll be given a description. So just a lot of generic information, but what makes your business unique? And that's really something you need to think about and contemplate, is why are you going to be somebody that we are going to buy goods and services for? Why are you unique? Is it your product that's unique? Is your product better? You know, because people get in habits of buying. So what makes your particular business unique? And why will your business be successful? Always good to know going in. And then also what licenses and businesses that you will need. So over here on the left side is page 2 of that template. And on the right side is page 3. Let's go over to page 2. And it's where your business will be located. To qualify for the California Dream Fund in the Central California region, you need to be within one of those 14 counties. The program is statewide and has other program leaders in those particular areas. But here in the Central California region, you will actually need to be located in that region, and you'll need to show where you are located. You'll need to become an SBDC client too, as a matter of fact. Then we're talking about your experience. It's always good to have particular experience, but not a necessity, not totally necessity, but what are some of the expertise and what are some of the things you have moving forward? Why do you want to start this business? I think it's a great question. You know, we get a lot of great answers, and then it moves right into your competition. Who are your biggest competition? And really the one thing I hate in life, and I don't even like the word hate, and I really probably don't even hate this. I don't hate anything for that matter, except hate. But it really kind of shows, I think, a lack of understanding. If you're a small business owner and I ask you a question, who are your biggest competitors? And you come back and say you have no competition. And trust me, that's an answer I've gotten probably, I would guess, over 100 times. And even in the shallowest form of competition, there are competitors out there. There is one way, shape, or form to compete for something. If somebody has an electric car, when Tesla came out, or Tesla wasn't the first electric car, but when those came out with the first electric cars, they could say we have no competition. But sure, gas combustible engines in cars were one. Used cars were another, hybrids, etc. So really taking a wide focus and wide view of your competition is really important. And how you're unique and how it will be fared against your competition. I really love the point in this of being able to analyze your competition and objectively look and see why your particular product is better than others, or why you think you will compete more favorably and unfavorably. And really, I'm looking for those unfavorable things. I want to see those things where you recognize where you're going to particularly have a weakness. Page 3 gets into the marketing strategy. You know, at the SBDC, we have a wonderful program called SBDC.net, where we can actually help you with doing market research and analysis. You can talk to any of your SBDC consultants about that, and you can get information on that particular market that is provided to us from an SBDC in San Antonio, Texas. Also, knowing your target market is also very important. So then the final part of this gets into your operations. your particular role in the business, how many employees, contractors you have, hours a day, for example. And then it gets into some of the financial aspects. One of the things that I think most people are surprised with when they start a business is that they get their business up and going and they've written a business plan and they've planned for this to happen. They've planned for actually this, and this, and this to happen. And it doesn't. Things change. What they had anticipated happening didn't happen. Maybe it's a good thing because maybe there are opportunities that start popping up the first few months or first year of being in business that they didn't realize. And now it's a great opportunity. It's a wonderful chance to get out there and to actually look at markets that you weren't planning on focusing on. So on the business plan part of it, there's also going to be funding. So what are you going to use your funding for? One of my favorites on here is going to be right there, working capital. And basically establishing permanent working capital that I'll talk about in a moment. So you kind of put what funds you're going to be putting in, what the California Dream Fund, and then other funds. So they really want to know, how is this business going to be capitalized? So it's important, to note that personal funds, other funds, it could be actually another loan. It could be actually a crowdfunding campaign, for example, or other things. But there's your California Dream Fund. And then here's their income statement that they have. If you've been on Webinar Wednesday before, over the last couple of years, you've seen my wonderful cash flow forecast, which really, really is a better document than this, but this is what we have, this income statement. And it can be generated from a cash flow statement. Businesses fail for the biggest reason of all, because they run out of cash. And a cash flow forecast will do this. But this will show you basically your profit and loss statement on how you hope and anticipate to actually earn money during that first year. And then there's a page 6 that does not want to come up. So anyway, that's your business plan. And so your business plan is something that's going to be very important as you go through the California Dream Fund process. And again, it's important, I believe, to go through after receiving a little bit of training. You've received a little bit of training now on the business plan if you hadn't had any exposure to it at all. But then that technical assistance is going to really take you to that next level. Talked a little bit about that training fund of trying to look in and take most advantage of your training and the opportunity that you have to what you have. And so now I get to move to my working capital. And permanent working capital is really something that is the financial base for every business. There's 2 forms of working capital in a lot of our opinions. One of them is permanent and one of them is temporary. That permanent working capital is that base that you have to work with. In this case, it could be this $5,000 to $10,000. So that $5,000 to $10,000 could be that base of working capital you have to operate within your business. It could be for buying items. It could be for buying limited amounts of inventory. It can be used basically to fund then temporary working capital. So permanent is that base of new and existing business need to operate and function on a consistent and uninterrupted basis. So this could be a source of that permanent working capital. And then the other component is that temporary working capital that will be generated from once you start business sales. It'll be used and actually kind of done throughout that particular aspect of when you actually generate revenue from services that you provide, revenue from products that you sell through replacing that particular inventory. So that permanent working capital is such a vital aspect. Okay, so there's your dream fund in a lot more detail than we've been able to provide in the past. Let's talk about the Kern County Small Business Micro Grant Program. And again, it's the intent of this program, and you always hear me talk about intent on these particular programs, because when we got kind of bogged down in the rules and the aspects of that changed, as far as there's so many rules to interpret in these programs. We learned that with the original PPP 2 years ago. So now we have the program intent is what's important, and it's really to help those smallest and neediest and most vulnerable small businesses, those micro businesses that generate less than 50,000 that were not able to receive the California Relief Grant Program that we talked about. That one that was administered from Lindustry. So if you received that, the state of California says, okay, we're done with you. We're not going to allow individuals to have both of these. There is a checking process to where your application before it's approved, that if you check the box that you did not receive the California Relief Grant and you did, then they will disallow that at that time. If you replied no, unfortunately, if you replied yes, that you received the California Relief Grant, then unfortunately at this time anyway, could change. We've seen changes already, as Maureen explained later on, could change. But at this time, it's definitely no. So funding starts either the last day of March, as my optimism still prevails, but more likely in early April. Funding for this program is expected, at least in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, it's expected to last, and I do have information on the provider information that we have, and also the 3 other entity partners that are contributing and working this particular program as well. So that funding, I believe, is expected to last into summer and potentially even longer, but we'll see. $2,500 main source must be from that particular micro grant. We are seeing applications that maybe in 2019 it wasn't your main source, but became your main source in 2020 or in 2021. I am going to lobby, go back to that purpose of intent, okay? The intent is to help our small micro businesses. And if at the end of 2019, you had worked longer in your job than you had your micro business, then technically you didn't actually earn more from your micro business. Now, I don't think the intent of the program is to actually throw those individuals out. If we can prove in 2020 or 2021 that that transition changed from, as an individual, you didn't earn more from your job or employment, that you earned more from that micro business. And that is the argument that I'm going to be carrying forward. I don't have an answer because I don't make the rules. You know, it would be simpler. I know you're saying. It would be better potentially if I made the rules, but I don't. So that's what we're going to do with that. And then also, again, you had to be in business on 12/31/2019 for this particular program. Businesses have to have had in 5 full-time equivalent employees or fewer. So we're here to assist you, help you with package the information, send it to the county to determine the approval process based on California state guidelines to assist in what's best for our smallest micro businesses in the county of Kern, of which we have 394 of these grant programs that are open and available. And like I say, I think it'll be going till summer. It is best to get it in and get considered. The funding has not happened at this point. 0 businesses have been funded in this program. Our SBDC, along with the others, will have individuals that go out in that first funding batch in early April. Again, you know, I like for you to sign up as an SBDC client and talk to an SBDC consultant. We went into the bigger picture a lot today, a lot with the business planning aspect for the DREAM program. But as a micro business, the bigger picture and talking to an advisor that can meet with you, a consultant who can consult you on business issues, on looking at potentially the bigger picture to grow or to potentially expand your business. We prefer to get your tax return, page 1040, page 1, 1040, your Schedule C, page 1, or a nonprofit, and you can call our office. And our office has been a little bit difficult to reach. We have had a little few illnesses, and I have been out quite a bit in the month of March with a family-related illness. So But we are there. We're open, and call us at 661-654-2856. So let's talk a little bit about the changes that we've seen with COVID with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. And these are the ones that are just a week old. You now have 30 days from the time your loan was signed to defer that. And deferring that particular loan, excuse me, I had to take a drink of water. Oh, that's better. Deferring that actually will be 30 months from when your loan was particularly signed. So deferment is you do not have to make a payment. It is not forgiven. Deferment is only you do not have to make a payment during that time. Interest still accrues on your particular loan. So that is the key also. Interest is accruing, and if you want to make payments, either partial or full payments, you can do so. The SBA recommends using www.pay.gov. You can make payments into your portal. If you receive the eidl loan where you actually sign the loan documents, then you have a portal where you can go into. And again, it's 3 months or it's 30 months from the date of that particular note. Some other changes that happened last week is SBA has been sending a lot of borrowers a monthly SBA form 1201 regarding payment notices. The SBA is going to send only regular payment notices via email in the future. So make sure you check your email. Again, you don't have to make a loan payment for 30 months after the time your loan was signed. 30 months if you want to. However, it is your election. You are paying accrued interest at 3.75%, which is going to be just such a great deal. So existing COVID borrowers, you can find your balances if you go into the Capital Access system. So it shows payment due dates and learn how to set it up and all that stuff by accessing the Capital Access system. And that is through SBA.gov. Deferments may result in balloon payments. So, and the reason that is because your loan payment is still going to have a 30-year term. And if you don't pay on it for 2.5 years or 30 months, you will theoretically have 2.5 years left sometime in, let's see, that would be 2052. So I challenge you to come and look for me. If you have any problems in 2052, you're likely not going to find me. After the deferment period ends, COVID eidl borrowers will be required to make those payments as we have talked about. And so that's a little bit about what has been going on there on that particular aspect. Those are the changes. The other thing that changes, I believe, is that it really gives borrowers 30 months also, because really the crisis, the pandemic, is now a 30-month term. It's a 30-month vehicle, and it really gives you 30 months in order to spend those proceeds that you have had. So going back to that particular date, it now extends it another 6 months that you have in order to utilize those eidl funds for a variety of different uses. So this is a letter that has gone out to a particular borrower who has an eidl loan. And as you see, this happened in March as well. So what they are actually doing is saying that the SBA in 2021 increased from 6 months to 24 months of while you can use working capital. And so if you're interested in pursuing an increase, you can go in and actually request more funds. I don't know the rhyme. I don't know the reason on why people are getting this. However, people are. And so that's saying there are still more funds available to businesses that might need them moving forward. Again, this is not forgiven. This is a loan program that is going to be paid off over that 30-year period of time. So just going back to the last changes that we've talked about a lot over the last 6 months, the big one here is that you could use the fund for more normal type expenses. Before, it was for like working capital for your business, which included payroll, equipment, paying off debt. Those are kind of new. If you can pay off debt with an eidl loan, you couldn't do that before. So you can pay off existing debt, not SBA debt, but other debt other than SBA, except for SBA, the current portion. So if you have an SBA loan, you can make your payment with your particular eidl loan if you particularly would like. Gee, I'm running out of time. Doggone it. Implementation of a deferred payment period. So we talked a little bit about that. There's also an establishment of a 30-day exclusive window that is such closed. The expansion of eligible use of funds. So that is really still the big one that we really like. And then there's really something we really haven't talked about much, but it is a simplification of the affiliate requirements. And affiliate or affiliated businesses gets a little bit complicated when you have one or two businesses under the same kind of roof, or you're affiliated with that are not even under the same roof. So you could have two or three businesses that you own under an LLC, or excuse me, under a corporation, and you might have a separate LLC. You could have a couple sole proprietorships. And if you have a 50% interest in all those are all affiliated companies and all are subjected to SBA borrowing limits. Those were eased substantially on about 6 months ago. So we encourage people to call the customer service center for the SBA's COVID eidl. You see the phone number there, the 833. We're not going to have time to talk about this particular aspect, but we will one of these times get into those special acquisition corporations and how they're being used by students even now across the country. Next week on Webinar Wednesday, we're going to talk about the Cal Savers program. Why is that important? That is important because as of June 30th, most businesses, at least those without a retirement program, that have 5 or more employees will be required to register with the California Treasury office in this particular program. And there are mandated penalties. Penalties, I hate that word. For those that are not registered. With us next week will be Jonathan Herrera from the state of California Treasurer's office. He actually came in 2019 when it went down to 50 employees, but it now, 3 years later, is going down to 5+ employees beginning on July 1st. Okay, jumping into the chat box real quick, you will see that there are a lot of resources that are here. We got another increased tax credit for the purchase of EVs. Well, that would be nice right now, wouldn't it? To get a couple of agreements with that. And who knows, that could be part of it as well. Part of what happens, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe we'll know next week. So you see the information there if you are interested in the chat box for the Mono County loan program. There's a great deal of information there. And then also the Central California SBDC network. It shows that we're part of that Dream Fund. Can I get you the business plan template? I can get you a lot of templates, but I kind of have this program and application guide that has been provided by the governor's office, of which it tells me it's for internal use only, do not distribute. I guess technically I just distributed it, but we will see about that. So I think the first step though, the template is nice. I think if you want to work on a business plan, that is something to work on it with your advisor or working along that particular process. Is the California Dream Fund in San Diego, North County? Yes, yes it is. The San Diego region of the SBDC program. I believe all 5 of the centers have a program going. You're going to want to reach out to your San Diego-based SBDC locally. Maureen has also put in the stuff on the eligible businesses for the Kern County micro programs and also the SBA toll-free customer service number for eidl. Just a plethora, smorgasbord, as she likes to say, of resources in the chat box. We have some questions that are here, and let me go through these. First question. is the California Dream Fund only for new starts, or can it be for businesses that have been in operation since 2019? You know, that's a great question, just because it should be for new starts only. However, it depends on what type of operations I believe you've had since 2019. So if you have completed all the aspects of starting a business, there's a whole entire definition for what it is to be in business that the governor's office and actually the office of the small business advocate uses. So it has that particular definition. So I'm just going to have to give you that's a great question, and I could answer it either way. I believe it's going to be if you've been in operation and you have started the business since then and have officially started it, then it is going to probably be, it's only available for new starts. But if you started, say, an application process to become an LLC or a corporation, or you didn't carry it forward, or you have done some stuff in the business but really haven't generated a sale, for example, even though the business has technically been in operation since 2019, I believe that would be the criteria for that. What is the difference between an S corporation and a C corporation? Well, I like to think of an S corporation as being a small corporation. It is not the reason for the S in front of corporation. It's the subchapter in, I believe, the IRS code, but it is generally for a limited number of shareholders. It used to be 35. I think it's not coming to me right now. So it's smaller, and it does have some other differences between, but the main one is the number of shareholders. S corporation has a limit on the number of shareholders, and it is used more widely for small businesses rather than a C corporation, which are your major corporations, your General Motors and your Teslas and other things like that. Last question I have here is, please repeat info on the payment of existing 7A with eidl funds. Okay, if you have an eidl loan, the eidl loan, and let's say you received an eidl loan, hopefully what you're doing is you have a 30-month period and you are documenting what you're spending those eidl funds for. So if you take your eidl funds that you will be repaying back at 3.75%, you can make a payment on an existing SBA 7A loan. You cannot pay off the balance of that SBA 7A loan, but you can pay the current portion. So if you have a $2,000 SBA 7A loan that is due on a monthly basis, and you have a $100,000 eidl, let's say you haven't used your eidl, you could technically make the next 50 payments, not actually because it's for a 30-month period, but you can actually use the eidl funds to actually make that current payment. You just can't go back and say, gee, my SBA 7A rate is 7% with this bank. My eidl loan is 3.75%. That's a great deal. I'm going to essentially pay off my SBA 7A. Not allowed with eidl funds, but it is allowed to make the monthly payment. Okay, I've done what I thought I couldn't do today, and that is I have gone over. So want to thank everybody for joining us today as we do our monthly deep dive, as we like to call it. So for Maureen Busherdang in camera and behind the scenes, thank you for everything you do, Maureen. Contact your SBDCs if you have any questions. We'll be back next week for number 107. I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm out of here. We'll see you then. Bye-bye, everybody.